Greetings and God bless. I just wanted to give a message, and particularly to Ben Greenfield, but to everybody who thinks that their existence is a burden on the earth. I want to I want to invite you to a thought experiment. Now, imagine that maybe in 6 months or 3 years from now, so in 2027, imagine that there's some big supernatural event and the earth is consumed, the whole earth, the whole of existence is consumed in a purifying fire, just 3 years from now. So, all the efforts that you're doing is for naught because in 3 years, everything is going to change drastically and be purified. So there's not going to be any nuclear toxic products or plastics or whatever left behind. It's all going to be purified by the prime creator. Like this, just consider this thought experiment. And when I was very concerned about burdening the planet. Like, I grew up in New York City, so liberals were my teachers, and we were like, as children in school, we were indoctrinated. We're a burden on the planet, and we're killing the planet by being alive. We're killing the planet by, um, you know, using cars. We're killing the planet by eating food. We're killing the planet by taking a plane. We're killing a planet by turning on the water faucet. Okay. And so that was hammered into me when I was in elementary school, junior high school, college, especially. And then media also pushes that. And of course, your peers do, my friends. Would. And then I started looking at other things of this that's going on. And I realized that we're in the supernatural paranormal realm. And actually, even before that, I was looking into, like, I was following the Mayan prophecy of 2012. So I was looking into the Drumville Melchizedek, Secret of the Flower of Life, where he made a very convincing argument that we were all going to go to a different dimension in 2012. And of course, we didn't, at least not as we know it. Who knows? Who knows if, like, that's what um, the Mandela effect's about? Who knows? Because things have definitely, like, we have changed in so many ways, and for the worst. We've devolved since 2012, for sure. But I'm wondering if that this de-evolution of mankind, of Americans, did that start in 2000? And of course, did it start with JFK, or did it start with the founding of this country? But getting back to Ben Greenfield, Robin now Greenfield, uh, this fastidiousness about living as light on the planet as possible while still being an influencer, using technology and interacting in this modern world, because you need funding. Yeah, you've got a message and you're trying to encourage people. And like you said in one of your videos, you have a reach of millions of people. And the first time I think that I stumbled across your stuff, Ben Greenfield, now Robin, um, was your what's the word? Going in and retrieving food from the dumpster diving. So, and that was a couple years ago, but I think I've heard of you for a while. But I saw your video where you had these little seeds that, and I'm not going to be too descriptive because I think they're suggestive, especially in 2024, where there's this. We're in this population control situation, this eugenics situation, and in Canada, they're prescribing death to people that they just don't want to bother healing. Uh, and I can't remember, is it Australia as well? And probably it's going on in China. I mean, there's like this outright organ harvesting. And the thing is, when you organ harvest, it's while you're alive. So anybody who's thinking, oh, I'm going to donate more my organs, hospitals make a huge amount, millions, off of organ harvesting your organs and your precious body parts. In order for that to be a best successful transplant, no drugs, no anesthesia. So if you get into their hands and they know they can make what, $10 million or however off of your healthy body, for instance, Ben Greenfield, they're going to remove it without anesthesia. I mean, that's what happens with an abortion. It's pulling a baby part without anesthesia. So be very cautious when you sign away your life for hospitals' profits. And it's that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You think you're doing nice things for people, but your organs are going to be harvested while you're still alive. And and if there's like another lockdown, like how many crimes against humanity happened during lockdowns when hospitals are trying to make a profit, and they were incentivized a CV death, that if you call something a CV death, that hospitals were promised up to $500,000 for calling a death coronavirus. So some hospitals got only 100,000 for each coronavirus demise. But so there was just a big incentive to inflate those statistics. And if you look it up, people who died from a motorcycle accident or cancer, or diabetes, or whatever, suicide, was all called CV because the hospitals wanted that incentive. They wanted that money. And so if you're going to be right there, they're not there to be nice people. They're not there to make you feel better. They're there to prey upon who they can, and and still do enough so they don't totally get um, you know people taking revenge at the hospital. And hospitals do get away with so much, like falsely imprisoning patients. Um, so for the insurance money. And I've seen articles about this. I've known people who have had this done to them, multiple different people. So, anyways, um, you're not a burden on the planet, Ben Greenfield, Robin. You're not a burden. If you are here, God wants you here. If you are here, God intended you to be here, and he invited us to prosper, to grow, to expand, to create in this realm. He didn't say, "Oh, don't breathe too much." God didn't say, "Oh, don't take more than just a little bit of land." God said it grow, and love your neighbor. That's what God says in the Bible to us. And so, Ben Greenfield, please, please stop worrying about burdening the planet. And because I'm concerned that it's not constructive, especially when I saw those kind of suicide pills. I think, Ben, if I could say, I think you should throw them away. Throw them away that nobody else can find them, because you're going to be asked by some desperate people, if they haven't already, and you will be responsible for what they do with that because you've provided them the substance. So it's just not a good idea. And I understand you're about freedom and so forth. And that's the thing about freedom, is you need to give yourself freedom to be, to exist. Now, I think it's great, natural fiber clothing and dyes and all that. magnetics, the toxic dirty electricity that we're exposed to. Natural fibers is actually, it soothes our nervous system, it soothes our mitochondria. And I think that's why a lot of people are drawn towards um, a more down to earth way of living, is because we're just so overstimulated by toxic stuff in our environment. So, so I think it's great, I think, but, whatever you do, but I really think that the fact that you have this suicide pill available um, shows that either you or somebody has had an intense existential dilemma. And like, suicide is like, if you've ever attended a suicide class, like how to prevent suicide prevention, suicide is a short term reaction to a long term problem. And when somebody commits suicide, it increases the chances of 30 people around that individual. It increases their chances of committing suicide. So committing suicide is like murder of one of the people that's around you. And I don't want to say that's definitive, but that is a statistical thing, that when one person commits suicide, it increases the chances of others around that person to commit suicide. And I think it's like a demonic spirit. And I think overconsumption is a demonic spirit. I think lack of being able to relate and being like so self-absorbed and so forth is a demonic spirit. So I think like your what your intentions are, or what you're drawn to, Ben. I think it's good. And I think I just want to put this cautionary message, and I want to also put this encouraging message that when you meet God, He's not going to be like, "Oh, you were a burden on the earth." What God's going to say is, "Why didn't you seek out my son?" But that's another topic. I won't go there. Um, but I wonder if like the kind of self, I don't want to say self-loathing. I mean, the left, the white heterosexual left has a lot of self-loathing, or they have this ignorant self-hating, like hating the whiteness of their own self. And they have this like double standard, because then they're going to have kids and have a 2-car, 3-car home and a big footprint on the planet. It's very strange. But I think that there's this desire to be responsible, and it becomes distorted. So it's not something that can be changed in me talking at a camera on something for YouTube. But I think you've got some good like perceptions, Ben. Of course you do. You have a very successful uh, presence and career, and um, communication style. And I just wonder if you're being too hard on yourself. I wonder if there's like a kind of life-giving um, avenue. And especially, I'm sure in your work, Ben, that a heterosexual, Caucasian, educated white guy, you get a lot of flack. Like, you're going to get a lot of passive aggressiveness from feminists and BLM folks and self-loathing white people, and who knows what else. You probably do, because that's just the nature of being a public figure, is you get a lot of flack. So what I'm trying to encourage you about, Ben, is that you have a right to be here. Just like some Native person has a right to be here. You have a right to be here. It's not a shame that you're here. It's not a shame that you're white. It's not a shame that you ride a bike. It's not a shame that you're a man and, heterosexual, uh, you know, and I would like to see more of that because when you're then, it sounds like your models are traditional people, um, you know, like maybe hunter gatherer forager kind of people, or just uh, just a non modern people. Now, the men did not feel bad for existing. The men weren't like, I really shouldn't use this iron hammer or this metal plow for my farm, and it's 1500. Like, men were not worried about how their existence or how having kids would be a problem on the earth. They just weren't so hard on themselves, and I think that makes for survival. And when we're like, oh, this product was made, with um, this kind of burden. I mean, I think it's great. I think it's great to avoid products that were made out of slave labor, for instance, like a Mac, Macs or Apple products. That's slave labor of China, or solar stuff that's made off of slave labor in Africa, where children are mining the products used in electric, like the solar panels and electric vehicle batteries and so forth. So I think it's great to avoid slave derived products of 2024. That's the interesting thing. That's what's going on in the left. The left's all bringing up what's going on, the slavery of 400 years ago, but the left is totally using the slavery of today. The left totally has their Mac computers and their Mac phones, and they totally are getting into solar panels made off of the backs of little African children. So the left doesn't care about the slaves in Africa today. They don't. The left doesn't care about the slaves of China today. They just care about something that happened 400 years ago. That's the logic of the left. That's the Alice in Wonderland logic. So I just think that feminism is maybe interfering with your thought process, Ben. I think communism, socialism, um, uh, like guilt about white colonialism is affecting you, Ben. And the thing is, you can't have those ideas, those destructive anti-mankind ideas in your head. And I know that sounds really crazy, but I'm not going to go into it why it's anti-mankind. You can look into it yourself. But if you look at the traditional peoples that probably are your role models of people who grew their own flax and weaved their own clothing, or sheared their own sheep, and did fiber arts to make their own clothing or whatever. These were not people who had gender theory issues or feminist issues or colonialist guilt or anything like that. And then if your family did have some sort of weird history, human sacrifice kind of stuff. I mean, that's the only thing that I think is dubious. And the thing is, so many people have Freemasons in their family or connected to the Freemasons, or secret societies and stuff like that. And clearly, you're not, it's not your fault. Your grandparent did something sketchy, just like it's not in California that never had slaves. It's not California's responsibility to pay people who were never enslaved for something that never happened in California. Like, again, Alice in Wonderland logic, and people are going along with this crazy logic. So, anyways, Ben, I think you need to have a more authentic mindset, an authentic survival mindset that our ancestors had, and that current indigenous people, like wherever you are, if you're an Inuit person in Alaska or whatever, any remote um, like forest dwelling people, they're not um, feeling guilty about feminism or colonialism or the how they're a burden on the planet. Native people weren't like, oh, we shouldn't procreate so we don't have more people on the planet. Like that was never a thought in like an authentic native tribe, um, or any authentic traditional people. They never are like, oh, we shouldn't procreate because it's a burden. And so, Ben, you're in this very leftist realm where people are guilted um, into not having children, and the only people who are having children are low income people or upper income privileged white people. Generally, I mean, of course, upper income privileged Black people, but the majority of the people that's showing up at events or whatever where there's a lot of people, it's low income people that are having kids, and then a handful of high income white people. So if more of the left did not feel like, well, number one, if they allowed themselves to be their gender role and their biological sex, and commit to a healthy relationship. I mean, that's asking a lot. Anyways, then there would be more like children from like leftist parents. And the interesting thing, if there were more offspring from people who are leftist, their children would totally smack their parents upside their head, because children always rebel against the parent. And so all of these children would be Republicans, because that's what I've noticed. When I had a friend whose mom was a hippie, and it was actually a coworker, and she became this total, like, she would join the Marines and was super straight edge. Like, so that's the sad thing about the left, is they don't have as many kids of their own, because their gender issues and their relationship issues and their identity issues are all screwed up, so they can't even become intimate or stable enough to have kids. So they can't have the wake up call that having children does, because children call parents out on the dumb stuff the parent does, if the parent hasn't totally abused and broken the kid. Because plenty of that is going around, and it's good that maybe it's the very sick leftists that we see so many of. It's good that they haven't had children. But I hope you see my point, though, Ben, is that if you're going to be like true to form, like authentic, um, like earth conscious and stuff, that means that you get to live, because the bird in the tree is not thinking, oh, I'm a burden on the planet. The little mole in the ground isn't thinking I'm a burden. The deer isn't thinking I'm a burden. So you got to stop thinking like you're a burden. Because let's say the deer is eating conventional grass on somebody's lawn, or a bird is eating a factory produced, packaged sunflower seed. Like, so, just bring it all back to that we are in this supernatural age of change. And so something in 6 months, this world could totally change in 6 months to something we could never fathom. Or it could totally be destroyed in a few years because of something supernatural. So, um, you're here for a reason, Ben. And the reason why you're here is because God wants to have a relationship with you. And, I think like your lifestyle is this, you're an ascetic and you're a seeker and you're a thinker and you're very thoughtful. And God's trying to reach out to you. And so I just encourage you to do so, to learn and try to even consider, just entertain. Nobody ever wants to look at the Bible because it's so easy. It's right there. It's like, oh, I'm never going to read the dictionary. I don't want to read the dictionary. I can look at it any time. And and then and then something happens and there's no dictionary. And that's what's going to happen with the Bible. So anyways, don't take the Bible for granted. And I recommend the King James Bible. And I think, I'm not saying change what you're doing at all. I think what you're doing is inspiring, and I think it's healthy, and I think it actually helps people reduce electromagnetic exposure and toxic exposure, chemical exposure. So, I think people with Lyme disease and people who are targeted by the deep state, I think a lot of what you're doing is probably beneficial to that demographic as well. I just want to encourage you to remove that white guilt and the male guilt, the heterosexual male guilt, and the Caucasian male guilt out of the thing. And I think you're aware of it, but just that suicide thing, because a deer is never like, oh, I'll try to, I think I might consider suicide. Whale's not like, I think, no. So I hope you see what I mean. I'm not sure I'm articulating myself sufficiently, but the fact that you have suicide pills around and you keep on talking about in one of your recent videos about the textiles, that if you die or when you die, you'll just go back into the soil. Like, I just feel like that's a little too vivid, a little too close to home. And, we've all become much more isolated after the lockdowns. Everybody's more divided about things. There's just something about the riots, the mentality, like the BLM stuff. It just did something. It did something that people seem to be waiting for. People who wanted to hate somebody got the opportunity. They got this justification of this knee-jerk judgment of complete strangers and this kind of self-righteousness. Because I was starting work with a client, and she was so mad at me because I got a time wrong, and she just thought I was a bigot because I screwed up a time, and I was giving a free session at the time. So, and I've just noticed that so we've gone through this major psychological operation, Ben, and your kind of job, like your kind of career and your personality, it probably made you really isolated and feel unwanted. And it made it harder for people who love you to reach out to you and care for you. And they probably still haven't. And maybe, things became alienated, So we are in a very difficult time, a very painful time, a very hard time. And that's why I think you need to get those suicide pills away. I think you need to stop focusing on how your body's going to decay effectively in the forest somewhere, because you're still a young man. You're a young man, you're a healthy man, and you may have something else on the horizon. You're a professional, so you're going to just take what you've been doing to the next level. And I just wanted to encourage you in that. And don't let the demon of suicide entertain you. Don't let it rationalize anything to you or your friends, associates, or whatever. And I pray that you get what you need, the strength you need. I pray that God removes anything that's obstructing your vision or your hearing or your heart. And I pray this for everybody who's listening that might relate to what I'm trying to say. So thank you for watching. God bless.